Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. We back, we live, we out here. COVID and everything, you know, we're still going live. Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast live show, Rum Shot Diaries, Season 1, Episode 17. I don't know if you lot can hear it in my voice, but I'm out here and I'm scrambling. So most of the commentary today is going to come courtesy of Dino and Santoki, and I'm just going to dip in bits and pieces here and there, but COVID can't hold me down. The cuss can still come even with COVID. Dino and Toki, how you both doing?
All good, man. All good. A pleasure to be here, man. As always, I hope you make it through the quarantine period and you come through all right. You sounding all right, man. If you could still cuss West Indies, then everything's working 100%. You'll be all right. Santoki, how you doing, man? Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Dino. Michelle, I hope you're keeping strong. I know you got Ray and nephew to give you a bit of protection in the isolation. And obviously, I know it's a sad time for you with the amount of dropouts in the West Indies squad. I know you were set for your debut as a West Indies international, but obviously COVID has ended that. But hopefully, we'll see you in the Island Tour match. I know you've been training hard for that middle order spot.
Yeah, most definitely. I haven't given up. And once I get out of this quarantine and get out the other side, I'm going to pick up the training once again and see if I can get my way into the West Indies side somehow, some way. But ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are in the chat, say hello. Obviously, you know how the show works by now. If you're new, though, to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, welcome to the show. Press like, press subscribe, tell a friend, share the link, so on and so forth. Lots of people won't be able to join us live at this time. You know, it's like 4-3 o'clock, depending on what zone of the Caribbean you're in, and in the States as well. So if you're watching this on the repeat or the rerun, all the better. Press like, press subscribe, share it with your friends, etc. But today's live show is, it's the end of another series. Technically, the series should have been going on with 3 more games, but due to, I'm not the only one who got struck down with COVID. We wish well for all the players and support staff who are still in Pakistan, who are unable to fly home yet because they're having to fulfill their quarantine. Shea Hope, Justin Graves, Akil Hussain, Ruston Chase, Carl Mayers, Dario. Who else am I missing?
That was one of the coaches.
The doctor.
Yeah,
Roddy Eswick. So loads of people fell down with COVID, and we hope they're safe. We hope they're resting up well during the quarantine, and all being well, they'll be home for Christmas to be with their families in the Caribbean. So the ODI tour, as we know, was called off. We didn't have a large enough squad to play the ODIs, and based on some of the comments that have come out from Pakistan, I don't think the players would have played it even if there were members of the team there. I think there was a lot of fear and trepidation. Santoki, you and I were chatting in on the WhatsApp when this was all going down, saying the players will want to go home for Christmas. They will not want to extend their time and possibly have to spend Christmas quarantining in Pakistan. But let's just talk on that. Not that we're talking about, not that we want to speculate on health and safety, but just any views. Start with you, Santoki, in terms of just the whole COVID thing and the impact on the tour.
Yeah, I guess I don't really know. I wasn't privy to obviously what procedures were in place, and kind of I did read that obviously COVID had affected a few PSL teams that had been staying in the same hotel. So maybe it was something to do with the arrangements they had at that particular hotel. But other than that, you'd think West Indies are so experienced with going to quarantine in different countries. You'd think that they would know exactly what needs to be done. And so far, I know we've had individual cases of players getting COVID on tours, but there's never been a mass outbreak like this. So for all we know, it could be, I mean, I think it was confirmed it wasn't a new variant. So it's hard to tell exactly how this kind of broke through. But at the end of the day, it's happening all across the world. As you said, COVID cases are rising. So it was inevitable, I guess. The fact they could play 3 T20s in the end was was something. But yeah, it just seems inevitable this time of year that COVID is going up, and it's no surprise that cricket has been affected, just like every other aspect of society at the moment.
Dino, anything from your standpoint?
No, I mean, Santoki summed it up well there. I mean, we saw what happened with the women's team with COVID as well. So it's just really about everyone just being safe. You know, it's uncertain times and these things will happen. And it was mentioned so many times, but I have to say it, you know, kudos to West Indies for sticking it out, you know, for even being there in the first place and then finishing the series. That says a lot, you know, and I think everyone can be satisfied with that. And we just wish that the guys can get home safely, that they're all as well. I mean, you know, to have COVID in another country and you're quarantined around this time, you know, it can be tough. And, you know, Mash, you can give them a call, man, and help them through this.
Most definitely, you know. Let me try to set up a quarantine chat with some of them whilst I stay locked in my house until Christmas Day. But that notwithstanding, we played the 3 T20s versus Pakistan. As you said, Santoki, on our Twitter feed, arguably, yes, the World Cup, they didn't bring it home, but arguably the best T20 side in the world. If we go on recent kind of form across the World Cup, it almost begs the question how they managed to lose to Australia in the semi-final. So we do have to put it in context. Irrespective of the COVID pullouts, even if everyone was there, we were up against it, given the strength of the Pakistan team. And just to kind of recap for everyone, three games, 3 defeats. First one, a heavy defeat by 60+ runs. Second one, a tight defeat of sorts by 9 runs. And then the third one, we put up 207. And again, have to shout out Santoki. Santoki tweeted at the halfway stage of that game, I don't think 207 is enough. And Pakistan chased that down with a full over to go to chase down the 207. And I mean, I'm looking at my notes. You know what? Let's start here. It wasn't before the show started. I was discussing with Santoki and Dino, like, what's our key talking points? And I think this wasn't what we were going to start with, but I've just changed my mind. The general tone that I picked up from these 3 games, Santoki, and those of you in the chat, some of you I'm about to upset and possibly with these comments, but jump in. You know that we accept all the comments. The general tone I picked up was one of, this is exciting. We've got a brand new, young, inexperienced team, and this is what I want to see. This is the way forward. Our future looks exciting, and I'm so happy with what I've seen. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't have those views. That's not my point. What I am going to say, though, and then I'm going to throw it to you two to unpick it. We've been here before with West Indies in all formats of cricket, where we're quick to herald that the new team that we see, this is the one now. This is what's going to take us forward. This is going to be the difference. Is it harsh of me to say that people were saying that a bit too quick? Like, yes, and again, the context is Pakistan. So they are 2 of those games were very good performances in the context of it being Pakistan. But we've been here before, everyone. Like, we might need to see a bit more of a sample size than 3 T20 games. But Santoki, jump into it.
Yeah, I think it was unusual because if we'd been eliminated from the World Cup and people started calling for new names, that's natural. That's sort of what happens with teams, especially after a tournament. But we saw it before the World Cup. CPL, people were saying Romario Shepherd needs to be in the West Indies side. Dominic Drake needs to come in. Odean Smith, the senior players, they're not going to perform well. Obviously, at the World Cup, they did underperform, but it was weird that people were calling for new faces to replace these experienced players before the World Cup had even taken place, considering we'd beaten Australia 4-1. Obviously, we'd lost to South Africa 3-2, but as a close series. The performances of 2021 weren't terrible enough for me to suddenly think, all right, the senior players need to go and we need to usher in a new era. So I think people were quick to jump the gun, whether it's a personal dislike of the likes of Gayle and Russell and their sort of perceived arrogance. But as well, as you said, Mash, obviously these performances were against a strong Pakistan side, so we can't take much from it. But it does show you what a steep learning curve it is to jump, especially from CPL to top-level international T20 cricket. And these players have to bridge that gap very quickly with the World Cup coming in about 9 months' time.
Yeah, Dino, jump in.
Yeah, man. Herald a new age. Yeah, sing the praises of the young guys, and then let me just take it further from what Santoki's saying because I'm agreeing with him. And to herald a new age, you kind of give them. They have a room for error, right? This is what you let them grow. It's okay. What would have happened? I always say, what if, right? What would have happened if we got absolutely demolished in those 3 games and they showed no competitiveness whatsoever? Or what would have happened if we had won the series 2-1 with a fighting effort? So, then we would talk about heralding a new age. I think it really the guys came in and they did their job, and we were exposed where they needed it. Like the bowling in the death overs was consistently poor in the 3 games, and
Mm.
that's you identify then, okay, you look at who's missing and you say, okay, well, we can work with that. The batting was all right, but to herald a new age of young players, I think to do that, you still need experience meets youth. You don't need just a whole brand new team of youth. And Santoki said, and you guys said on this show, is the CPL enough preparation for this type of challenge? I think it's Ireland next. That's the kind of challenge we expect to win those games, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I like what you said there, Dino, about I'm hoping that yes, there was a lot to see there. Yes, there was a lot to be. I don't know if excited is the right word, but there was a lot there to hold on to. But I'm hoping that the overall take that most people had from the games were we can't just jettison all of the experienced players. And I'm hoping that some people saw enough in those games to go, maybe we might need Pollard around for a bit longer. Or maybe, do you see what I mean? Like all the chat before the series of let's get rid of Pollard. Like I'm hoping people saw that, no, you're still going to need a bit more, to use a different vernacular, ring smarts on the field. So I'm hoping people see that yes, we can take the positives from that, but that is to mesh with what we already have existing. And remember, Lewis wasn't there, Hetmeyer wasn't there, Pollard was out injured. And in fact, what's probably wise to do, given that Dino spoke about death bowling, I think people need to remember that coming out of the World Cup, which was obviously very, very disappointing, but what would you say were the key issues that had to be solved once that World Cup was over? Like, obviously, there was lots of discussions, there was lots of arguments, there was lots of complaints about the squad that was picked. But what were the issues that had been identified in the World Cup? People kept talking about ones and twos. I still think that's an overrated argument, personally, but people were talking about ones and twos. Gayle, we knew was going, so we know that there had to be a new opening batsman. Bravo was going, and that kind of big time experience of Bravo. I hope people now see how important Bravo actually is. That ability to bowl at any stage of an innings, but particularly at the back end and bring a match back. So Bravo has to be replaced, particularly with the death bowling. So Gayle and Bravo were two big ones. An opening bowler and a death bowler. You could argue, if I bring up the last team that played, this was roughly speaking the team that would have played against Bangladesh in the World Cup, right? And I want everyone to kind of just look at that team. Arguably, there's only 2 spots for the current West Indies team. I'd love to know from the 2 of you if there is anyone in that 11 who you think shouldn't be there, and who from this Pakistan series has done enough to where we can go, right, you've definitely stated your claim to be part of the 11 going forward into 2022. For me, the obvious person is Brandon King. He's re-elevated himself again to take the opener spot. Whether he's going to be able to, as you say, Santoki, whether he's going to be able to show the necessary consistency going forward is a big question mark. But there is an opener spot available. Lendl's gone. Chris has gone. So there is an opener spot available. And Brandon couldn't have done any more than he did in that series to put himself in pole position. But you see that other spot that I've got there, question mark after Holder. What are we saying? Romario Shepherd, Old Dean Smith, Dominic Drakes. Did you see anything from those 3 to say, yeah, you can fill that hole from Bravo? And there's a big question mark over Andre Russell, which we'll probably get to near the end, because there's lots of people in the Caribbean who want him. Mason and Guess in their latest cuss out show this week were cussing out Andre Russell. We'll get onto that. Mr. Mason. And we'll talk about the question marks around Andre Russell. But what do you two feel about what you saw? Look at that squad on the screen, and who do you think state to claim?
Yeah, I think generally that's a solid lineup of players who I think generally deserve to be in the squad. Arguably, obviously, Fabian Allen. Where would you fit him in as well?
Oh, good point. I forgot about Fabian. Sorry, good point.
Would be a question. So that would obviously be, at the moment, you'd say probably Russell. It'd be a toss-up between whether Russell, because Fabian offers that bowling option, and obviously he's a finisher as well. In terms of what you said regarding what two players can fit that 11, Brandon King, obviously, he's one of the players who stood out on this tour. At the moment as well, if we're realistic, there's a lack of viable options for opener at the moment. If you think about it, it's pretty much Brandon King, Shai Hope, Andre Fletcher, if he's still around, if they're still looking at him. So for me, the spot is there for Brandon King to take, and he's shown that he can play very powerful innings. We saw against Pakistan, he hit boundaries, he rotated strike. So he's someone who I think can work well with Lewis, similar to what Simmons has been doing for the past few years. The other spot, we filled it with Allen now, but in terms of Shepherd, Drakes, Odie and Smith, I was impressed with what I could see their batting more so. I think it was the second T20, we saw them just having a go at finishing. But in terms of bowling, it was very loose. There was nothing to suggest sort of they were ready to claim a spot in that West Indies side. They obviously need more practice. As Dino said, the Island series is a perfect opportunity to kind of practice that skill set, because it's hard for players to come in for their debut series against Pakistan in Pakistan. So we'll see more of their talent against Ireland at home. So I think after that, we'll have more of a reflection of who can fit into that squad, I think. And who else is missing? I think for me as well, O'Shane Thomas is someone who's come up. And O'Shane's one of those players. A lot of people criticize the fact that he's very loose. He goes, his lack of development. I don't know, with O'Shane, he always gets IPL deals. He always gets picked. For me, he's like the equivalent of like a football in comparison, like a Ravel Morrison. We know what talent he's got. It's just we're always giving him chances to unlock that talent. I think they're going with him, hoping that if he can fulfill his talent ahead of Australia, he'll be a world-class bowler. But at the moment, he's not really showing that at all.
Dino, before you jump in, because Jano says O'Shane looks overweight. I agree. I'm still concerned. Did you see O'Shane yawning after he got out? I'm still concerned about O'Shane's conditioning. I'm still concerned personally. I don't know, and if O'Shane saw this, maybe it's like you're chatting fart. You don't know about my strength and conditioning, but he just looks too bulky. I don't know, I could be wrong, but a lot of you in the chat, and sorry if I haven't been able to get the comments up, but I saw some of you mentioning, and this I'll hand over to you, Dino. The one thing that's missing from this team was from this team here, an out-and-out fast bowler. Now, the reason I mention that is Odean Smith bowls at 90 plus. O'Shane bowls at 90 plus. One of the critiques of the team in the World Cup was we didn't have that X factor bowler. O'Shane was in the squad, never played. O'Shane's now gone to Pakistan to play in this series. But in fairness for those criticising O'Shane, his economy rate was better than both Odean Smith and Romario Shepherd. I'm not saying that means he was good. His economy was, let me find the stats and facts. O'Shane economy was 10.8, Odean's was 11.4, and Romario's was 11.5. Now, you could say that's just splitting hairs, but the point is his economy was actually better than the other two. And in 2020 cricket, I look at economy personally before I'm looking at wickets, in some senses. So, to me, there is still a big missing X-factor raw pacer for the T20 side, and I'm not convinced that the Pakistan series showed me anything that suggests that we're not still going to be looking in about 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it might be. But Dino, come in.
Yeah, man. Firstly, on O'Shane, man, just the comments that had me laughing. I can't really go through all the comments, but yeah, O'Shane agility. Think about agility. We've seen Rakeem Cornwall in the slip be able to dive left and right to take a catch and slip. There, you just wonder if O'Shane has that same agility. That's one of the questions. Sometimes he looks a bit clumsy. His fielding is obviously not the best. So that's why you would have questions about, how fit is this guy? And then the ability, consistency of his line and length, like people mentioned. And you mentioned X factor, and you showed the team there. I think Odin Smith is a guy out of these bowlers that we've seen. That Odin Smith is a guy with that raw pace that we can say gives a lot more than just raw pace. So, and he is a guy that's developing, and he will be in teams. He's already been picked in other franchises. So he's going to have his opportunities. This is the guy that's on top of the pecking order for the rest of the guys. If he can come in and play that role in T20, I think it's perfect for him. Once the pace is up and play that role that a genuine fast bowler would do. And just to go back to, so I know the missing parts of the team there. Just at the top, Hope. Obviously, Hope and Brandon King. Obviously, Brandon King now and Lewis is like a match made in heaven. If these two can just have a partnership come together, that would be the best thing. I think Hope comes in there ahead of Devon Thomas as the wicketkeeper, as the backup wicketkeeper, right? Because Hope brings a lot more to the table. Well, that's arguable because Devon Thomas is a very dynamic player, but Hope for me, because of the opening situation, you want a guy that can do that role. And I think that's it on the team. O'Shane, how long have we been waiting for O'Shane? The other bowlers, you mentioned the economy rates. That was one more thing. The economy rates, when everyone's getting smacked around with the economy rates, don't really matter that much. But O'Shane's role is always a bit different from the other guys, being the raw pacer. So you expect some top edges for 4, which have happened during the tournament. So, but still it's just O'Shane consistency is what we want to see. But that's it on those points.
Most definitely. And again, we were going to leave this to the end, but maybe actually it's a perfect segue to get into it, which is the elephant in the room. So episode 53 of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast should be out, people, sometime tomorrow. It's still we're still chopping it up in the editing room. Now, when that comes out, there is a section on episode 53 where I send shots for Andrew Mason and his show Mason and Guests, and do listen to it. I'm sure it's reached Mr. Mason's ears by now. But basically, I send shots to them and I say that their show is nothing but foolishness. However, off the back of me saying that, this week, the latest thing that they were ranting about on their show, and the headline that Sportsmax carried in their kind of like online edition was that we need the headline that I saw was we need to stop the foolishness with Andre Russell. Now, Andre Russell chose not to go to Pakistan, said he didn't want to be in a bubble, personal reasons. Similar to when we went to New Zealand and he said he didn't want to go New Zealand. And then next thing we know, he went to play Lanka Premier League or pitched up in Lanka Premier League, or whatever it was that he did. So after saying he's not going and West Indies announced that he's not going, about a week later, we suddenly see Andre Russell has signed a big bash deal and he's going out to play for Melbourne Stars. Now, Andre Russell has yet to explain himself. I would argue he doesn't have to explain himself. He's a freelancer. He's under no contract with Cricket West Indies. So technically, he does not need to explain himself. I think if Andre Russell did explain himself, the way he'd try and get round it would be as follows. He would say he played all the 2020 matches in 2021. He didn't go to England to play the 100. He gave up his 100 contract to commit to West Indies in 2021. He went to the World Cup for West Indies. He's played IPL. He played T10. And he would say, I reckon, I'm speaking for him, but I reckon this is what he would say. I didn't want to go in another bubble, whereas Big Bash League, you can actually go about the place. You can go where you want and you can live some freedom. As a freelancer, I think he's well within his rights to do that. So that's not me defending him. That's just me making the argument if you wanted to go down the line of saying Russell's within his rights to do what he does. But I think actually, despite me cussing them out on the upcoming episode of the podcast, I do think Mason also has a point, though, to say, well, what's going on here? Andre picks and chooses when he wants to play for West Indies, more so than the other players. Because Evan Lewis and Shimron Hetmeyer, they said, we're not going, but they stayed in their yard. They stayed in their yard with their peoples, because they want to spend Christmas time and chill out with their peoples, right? It's easier for West Indian fans to respect that than it is to respect Dre Russ saying, I don't want to go. Then he pitches up in Australia to go play some tournaments. So I get the cuss. I get the cuss. But then my issue is this. As much as we cuss Andre Russell, what makes people think that Dean Smith, Romario Shepherd, and Dominic Drakes aren't going to be doing the same thing a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 2 years from now? So when people are getting all uptight about what Dre Russ is doing, you don't think a lot of West Indian players are aspiring to do what he's doing. Those three players I just mentioned, I don't know if Drake's did, but certainly Dean Smith and Romario just got PSL deals. So clearly they're now on the franchise horizon. This is how it starts, Santoki. You do well in CPL, then you get your little LPL deal, then you get your little PSL deal. And if you do well, then the IPL deal comes. So as much as people want to go for Dre Russ, if they aren't looking at the bigger picture and the elephant in the room, this will not stop happening with the golden era of the Gales and the Bravos and the Pollards and the Russells and the Purans. You see how Puran still ain't played a test match. Hetmar ain't played test since 2019. So I think people are naive to pigeonhole it as stop the foolishness with Andre Russell, because you're going to be saying stop the foolishness with Shafane Rutherford then. Because where's Shafane Rutherford? He playing cricket elsewhere. This isn't going to go away. We have to address the elephant in the room. Gentlemen, off you go.
Boy, Dino, you want to go first on this one?
Where's Carlos Brathwaite, right? When West Indies are done with you, what do you do as a player? You go on the global scene and you try to get gigs everywhere else, you know? I would take the side of Russell in this case, because if you don't have a West Indies contract, you're fine to do whatever you want. The question is the guys who are on contract and get the leeway is really what strikes me. Look, Russell's in demand. What other player is as in demand as Russell to go in the Big Bash? Do they even want West Indians or any of our West Indians in the Big Bash? Are anyone good enough to make it in that league in those conditions? So look, if he has to go, he has to go. Let's be real about it. How much does 3 T20s pay from West Indies over one Big Bash season for Andre Russell? Right? If you just weigh it up, it just makes literal sense for him financially to do that. All right. If you're not committed to West Indies in a contract, that's it. West Indies can't afford it. I saw some good thoughts from some people saying, well, what if West Indies can match a contract yearly? Then you're saying West Indies has to match the IPL, the Big Bash, the PSL, the Lanka League combined and pay this guy that amount to have him on contract? That doesn't make sense for West Indies either. You know, so this is a life of freelance cricket. And it happens because I'm just going a bit more into it. Because we don't have much opportunities here in the West Indies, and that's why it happens. And the guys have to go elsewhere to be paid what they deserve. These guys deserve what they get everywhere they go. Why are the West Indian cricketers right now in the US Open? So many of them are over there, and they get treated much better than they do in the Caribbean, at least financially. If you want to talk facts, at least financially they are. You know, a couple of weeks or a month in the US playing cricket for those leagues, which are minor leagues, is actually more lucrative than some major contracts here in the West Indies. Arguably a first-class contract. You could look into that. I could look into that, of what a first-class contract pays. Some guys can make that below. Some guys below that level can go to USA and make more money. So as long as there's no opportunities here in the West Indies to showcase their talents, as long as we're sleeping on our youths and not providing platforms for them, they're going to go their ways because the market demands their talents and they're going out of the way. Just look at Kenar Lewis. Is one guy. I know you mentioned Rutherford is a perfect example. I just said Brathwaite as another example on the other side of the spectrum. Kenar Lewis might force his way. I would love to see him over the next year, just based on domestic T20s, force his way into a World Cup team. That's going to be a mind blow, you know. So, you know, this is the life of a T20 cricketer. I have to defend them, you know. That's just me.
And Santoki, before you jump in, the other name that we didn't even mention, Jaden Seals, is tearing it up right now in LPL. And anybody,
The IPL
anybody who
draft
doesn't
is soon.
like, if you
IPL
have,
auction.
if people haven't figured it out already, you see how he's torn it up in LPL. Every single league now is going to want Jaden Seals. Obviously IPL, but every single league is going to be making offers to Jaden Seals in 2022. And that's now going to be a problem because West Indies are going to have to find a way to juggle trying to make him, like, as we've joked, Santoki, but it's actually not a joke. Jaden Seals' test career could be over already.
Yeah, I think it's just like Dino said. It's just the global market. Russell's 33, coming up to 34. He's gonna want to make as much money as he can. There's an argument to be had that by playing in the Big Bash, he's preparing himself more for the World Cup next year than the current players are in Pakistan. So that could be one argument as well. So I can see both sides of the coin, but as well as you said, financial realities is as much as people such as Mason might want everyone to be patriotic and drop everything to play for West Indies. At the end of the day, as an athlete with a short career, you're going to need to make as much money as you can in as much time as you can. So Jaden Seals, for instance, he'll see the money on offer for Lanka Premier League. He'll see how light the work is compared to playing tests. And if he gets an IPL deal will be worth 5-6 times a West Indies central contract, at least. So as you said, Mash, the lure of playing T20 cricket, it's going to affect anyone. No one is noble enough. People always argued that Jason Holder gave up T20 contracts valiantly because he wanted to commit to West Indies. He came out earlier this year and said, no, he basically didn't really have a choice. And going forward, he wants to make as much money as he can. So no one in their right mind, as all humans, are going to turn down financial gain to commit to something else. So for me, it's as much as I can see why people want Russell to commit more. It's the global way of the game. Obviously, India, England, Australia, their central contracts can afford to compensate players sufficiently to commit to them. West Indies can't do that. So it's a free market for anyone to pick up as much money as they can where they can at the moment.
So let me answer you this question then. So I'd like to believe, actually, because Russell's contract in Big Bash League was actually only 5 or 6 games. So arguably, Dre Russ may well make himself available for the Island series at home, which is slated to be in Jamaica. I think all 4 games with the ODIs and the T20s, or the one T20 will be in Jamaica. So he may well make himself available for that T20 in Jamaica versus Ireland, then the 5 T20s or whatever it is that we've got versus England. He may or he may not, because there's no other leagues going on. So what's to say he won't make himself available? But more importantly, fast forward to October next year, right? Now, let's say all year we've been giving Drake's, Shepherd, Oldine Smith a run in that kind of lower, fast bowling, all-rounder position. And actually, Dean, I want you to answer this. Arguably, Andre Russell's bowling is better than those 3 in the T20 format. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm saying arguably. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying arguably there's a case to be made that actually he's a more savvy bowler than those 3 in the T. And he should be. Look at his experience in the T20 format. Now, let's say he doesn't play for West Indies. Let's say he only plays 35% of West Indies games in 2021, 2022. And then as we get near to the World Cup, the selectors are like, boy, it's not working with Shepherd, Oldine Smith, and they call in Russell. Everyone's going to cuss. So my question to you two is, would you call him Russell for a World Cup, irrespective of how many games he plays for West Indies next year? Or does there have to be a balance of him committing to an X amount of games to justify him then going to a World Cup?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. You see, this is mentioned the selection policy we come to. I mean, look, if Russell is in form, you want him in your World Cup team. You know, at this age, you know, and that experience, that's what you want. If he doesn't play T20s he should play. I mean, he should play you should represent the West Indies. I mean, there's qualifiers. Remember who didn't play qualifiers when we get to that. So there's qualifiers now. You should play qualifiers. And leading up to the World Cup, he should be part of the team to see how he fits into that team with the young talent coming through. That's what's needed. That's why we would have wished the senior guys was there. An ideal situation is your core team and you bring 1 or 2 guys in, young guys in, and fit them in. Like you showed that list. That's exactly what's going to happen, or something similar to those lines. So Russell walks into the team. how does he not get into the team? Does if he is in some public horrid run of form in domestic leagues, maybe he doesn't get in, and even then, he probably still will get in the team, right? So it's actually on the onus of the young guys to go and perform in every single thing they do in this next year. Basically, that's the onus is on them, because I feel even if Russell doesn't have form, that he's going to be almost a shoe in for that World Cup team.
1 second, Santiago, before we jump in. So because Demo made a point, and anyone who's not watching Demo's channel, Demo, last time I told you, put the link, the YouTube link, into the chat so people can go watch your stuff. So anyone who's not watching Demo's chat, Sports Frenzy, I was watching his show and their take on the Pakistan series earlier today. So go and watch Demo stuff, at Sports Frenzy as well. So put the link in the chat, please, Demo. But anyways, Demo says, I was just watching the Narayan play the US Open, and that I just wanted to come off the back of what Dino was saying, because when I saw Narayan's name for the tournament, that's when I realized, and I think Santoki, you and I were talking about it, the money must be running in the US Open, because Narayan wouldn't. Yes, it's local. Yes, he can jump on a quick flight from Trinidad to wherever it was in the States, Florida, or wherever it was. But Narayan's not wasting his time going there unless the money's worth him wasting his time. So that just highlights Dino's point earlier on, that financially, the players are seeing they're being able to eat a food for quick, light work. I don't know if Demo is right to say it was 30K US, but I remember you saying to me, Santoki, that there's no way Narayan would fly to America for that unless he was getting paid proper money.
Yeah, of course. Narayan's someone who earns near $1 million US in the IPL, so he's only going to commit to T20 tournaments. As you said, even though it's near, you still have to fly there. So he's only going to commit if there is significant money. And so I'm guessing there is in the US Open through sponsorship or whatnot. And that's why we saw an influx of 15 to 20 players, mainly from Trinidad, go out there and commit to the US Open. So again, like you said, with all athletes, they've got to make money. They've got to look after their family. They've got to pay the bills. So you're going to go where the money is, essentially, as blunt as it sounds.
The only thing I would say before I go to the next section is that what Cricket West Indies can do, because they don't have the finances to compete, and I think Pollard, in fairness, is one of the ones who's done this, but obviously he's a captain, is I just think you have to sit with the players, and Jimmy Adams alluded to this. Dino and I were in that press conference, I think, a few weeks back. I think Jimmy alluded to this, that you just have to sit with the players at the start of the year and say, we are likely going to need you for this, and this. And then that's where I do blame the players, because then it's up to the players, if they're given that, to meet them halfway and say, okay, cool. I'd ideally like to play this tournament, this tournament, this tournament. How about I go, so let's say Shafane Rutherford. How about you let me go to Bangladesh Premier League, play 3 games, and then I'll fly back to make sure I'm available. Like, rather than saying, well, I'm just taking my Bangladesh Premier League deal, so I'm just not available. So that's where I do agree that the players have to somehow meet halfway. But that can only happen if the selectors and Cricket West Indies are very transparent from the start and say, we need you available ideally for this set of dates through the course of the year, because the financial realities mean that they can't rely on just picking a man and assuming he's going to be available. So you have to try and be unique. You have to think outside the box of how to deal with these situations. But looking at the tournament itself, we mentioned the 3 T20s themselves. We mentioned Brandon King, but what other positives did you see in the tournament? I mean, for me, Romario Shepherd with the bat. But again, this is kind of like a similar argument we had about the test match. He's picked primarily to bowl, surely, not to be very good with the bat, however good he is lower down the order. I'd be intrigued to see where you two stand on Romario Shepherd, because I want to see him have an impact with the ball first before I see him have an impact with the bat. But he was good with the bat. Pooran, I thought, led from the front quite well, particularly in that last T20. Obviously, I said Brandon King already. I thought, although Old Dean Smith got carted, you know, when you look at a player and you're like, I can see the raw materials there, though. I feel like I can see the raw materials with Old Dean Smith, but he's gonna have to. They're gonna have to work on him. They're gonna have to refine him, and maybe actually the experience he's gonna get going to PSL and hopefully some other leagues actually will help him refine his skill set. And even though Hope only played 2 matches, for the first time, I thought, okay, I can see why people have been calling Hope's name in T20. It's still only as a backup, but I can see, I can begin to see why people are calling his names. Any other standouts for you, Santoki?
Obviously, Akil Hussain was obviously someone we know. We've been seeing him tear it up in CPL for years now, so it's good to kind of see him make a mark abroad. In Pakistan, he just looked very comfortable. He looked like our main spinner. Obviously, he's kind of been in the shadow of whether Narayan will come back and then Hayden Walsh Jr. given the opportunity, and then what Kevin Sinclair at some point. But now he's cemented his place as like our first choice spinner, which is good to see. A lot of people obviously talking about Shamar Brooks. For me, Shamar Brooks is just a stopgap. It's just one of those things. He played a really good third innings in the third T20, but no way is Shamar Brooks making his way into the T20 side going forward. He's 33 years old. I don't think he's got the capabilities to perform consistently at international T20 level. But it was nice to see a different player sort of open with Brandon King, and they put together a really nice power play. So that was one highlight. And then, like you said, Brandon King obviously was probably the main standout and beneficiary of the tour. Just going back to Mario Shepherd, I agree. I think West Indies, we've got an abundance of players who can finish with the bat. So we don't really need that from Shepherd. We need to see him do more with the ball. And this is what you've always alluded to, Mash, his performance in the Super 50 earlier this year, for instance, when he just leaked runs. Can he put a stop to that? Can he become more consistent is what we need to see from Shepherd going forward.
Most definitely. And I think Dino's...
Am I frozen? Can you hear me?
We can... Oh, you're back. You're back. Go for it, Dino.
Oh, my internet got messed up there. Positives, right? Yeah. I like that in the third game that they showed that if 4 guys make runs, you can get 200 runs. Right? Mm-hmm. That was really positive. So if you have 6 top order guys and 2 of those fail, you can still get 200 runs. We can't afford to have 4 guys failing in the top or more every single time. It just shows when you have a foundation at the top in every format. That's what we need. We need guys to put their hand up. And when you fail as one of the top 6, that has to be rather against the norm. That's ideally what we're looking for. Guys to just put their hand up and make the runs. I believe in the first match, did West Indies win the toss and bowl in the first match? I think that was really bad.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah.
In a batting friendly conditions. But the positives were that the batting, you saw improvement in the batting, you saw improvement in the bowling match to match. Right. And the point I just wanted to make on that positives is that in the CPL or the Super 50, when these young guys play, the tournament is a bit longer. So they get better as the tournament progresses because it's an ongoing tournament. In these short forms, that's why you check it traditionally. West Indies probably lose the first match of every single series because we either underprepared or we're not coming to terms with what is needed for the opposition in terms of plans or whatever. So, and then we get better as the series goes on. That's just how we do it, So that's not something for the youngsters. In fact, the fact that our youngsters could have competed with this team is really the biggest positive, that this team competed. So, that's good. That shows a lot.
Yeah, and although it seems harsh to say it, but negatives is too harsh a word. But I'm still leaving it there. I still think granted that the tracks were batting tracks. I mean, Pakistan let us score 207. Even in the second game, they let us score 163. So they were batting tracks. I do still think that, yes, Rizwan and Baba are world-class players and so on and so forth. I think our bowlers got carted around a bit too much, for sure. Rovman, I was a bit disappointed with because he had come into yes, he was a late call-up, but he had come in with actual form, T10 form. I think he played a Lanka Premier League game before he had to come. He hit like 60 odd off 20 there. So I thought he was in fact, he was disappointing, not even a bit disappointing. He was disappointing. And actually, I don't know what we're going to do with Hayden Walsh, I really don't know
Yeah, just quickly on
Uh,
Walsh, man, because
yeah, go on. 'Cause I don't know
I
what to say,
mentioned it.
Dino.
I mentioned it last time in the video we did leading up to this series that Hayden Walsh should not have been in the T20 team considering his form. You know, I know a little bit about leg spin in my day, but he needs to bowl 10 overs in a 50 over match. That's what he
Yeah.
needs to do and focus on executing his skill consistently in a longer format game. T20 is a game that requires a lot of variation, a lot of thinking on your feet as a leg spinner. And if you're not consistently delivering day in, day out, then you can't even work on your tweaking your game. It might actually throw you off. So he needs to focus more on the 50 over side of things. Yes, a lot of talent. What's his age now? 29?
Yeah,
Lots
yeah.
of talent there. So we have to get the best out of Hayden Walsh. And I'll go straight into the negatives, right? Obviously, O'Shane and Hayden Walsh, major red flags over these guys. What's going on in terms of these guys' development? One is younger, one isn't that young, right? Rovman Powell in the negatives didn't come on. It just shows T10 form, T20 form. We always ask, what is it in perspective? What does it mean in perspective? And Russell talks would lead to that. So that not and yet bowling got carted around, but it's a wake up call for young guys. It's to work on your death bowling and your plans and executions. I saw a lot of times in the death bowling why it went wrong. They bowled certain, let's say, Yorkers without the appropriate field or short balls without the appropriate field, and these are the learnings that bowlers will take from it. That's what they learn. Getting hit for six and stuff like that from these guys is like getting punched in the face from Mike Tyson. You might go stupid for a minute. You might not understand what's happening, and this is what they learn on the job. So that's why and on these tracks that were always suited for runs, we needed good spinners on these tracks actually to back up the pacers. The pacers were always going to be expensive. That's the game in this on these tracks. So what we needed were good spinners to bowl those tight, reliable overs, which we didn't necessarily have.
Santel, before you come in, I want to touch on this because I actually thought Darren Bravo did his job. So I'm surprised to see some criticism of Darren Bravo. Obviously, he didn't play the first two games, came in for the third one. And if anything, when I watched his innings, I was like, given the amount of cussing he got for going as the reserve player in the World Cup, I thought, well, you want somebody who's going to be able to rotate strike to allow the power hitters to blast off at the end. The guy went from he hit 34 off what 28.
Yeah.
Now that's the anchor guy doing that. Isn't that what you want? If anything, the question mark is why didn't Rovman do his job at the other end? Am I wrong to see it that way?
Yeah, no, this is what I tweeted as well because a lot of people were going at Bravo. I think, given the context, as you said, he was unwell for 2 games. He came in for the 3rd game. He essentially stuck to his role, which was Mash, as you perfectly described it. He was supporting other players, giving them the platform to launch, essentially. So the argument is, why didn't Rovman launch? And would it have been better it would have been better to send in an Odean Smith or a Mario Shepherd, because we scored 13 runs in the last 2 overs of that final T20 when you're looking at usually 25 to 30 when you have 7 wickets in hand. So we should have got 230 plus, which would have been a monumental score, which we didn't, which was largely just down to Rovman not doing his role, whereas Bravo stuck to his role. There's an argument he could have tried to hit big and finish, but at the end of the day, the onus wasn't on him. He was sticking to his job in the team. It was down to Rovman to fulfill his obligation as the finisher.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not trying to defend Bravo here, but I saw enough to suggest why he's at least in and around, and he also has a white ball contract. But I saw enough to suggest why he's at least in and around the squad to be considered. But just before you add your comments, Santok, if there's any more, just because I think this comment off the back of what Dino was saying is important. This is my issue with Hayden. In a game where you're only going to bowl 4 overs, I still think that you are guaranteed from Hayden 2 balls and over, which are long hops. That he's dropping, like even the first ball he bowled in the 3rd T20, dropped it short. And I was like, oh boy, because with Hayden, when he starts like that, it's almost like oh boy, it's one of those days, because it's clear he's a confidence bowler. But like I feel like Badri or someone needs to just take him under his wing and say, you know what, come for a 2-month camp with me, because Hayden just doesn't. And lots of people have criticised Pollard actually, and I'm not. Again, this isn't for me to defend Pollard, but people have said that Pollard doesn't use Hayden Walsh well. But I reckon Pollard doesn't trust Hayden Walsh, and I don't know. I don't know where you draw the line between trusting a leg spinner and recognizing that they're not going to bowl with the level of consistency that you need to justify using them. Santoki, jump in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Pollard and the management, that's why they sporadically use Hayden Walsh. They know he's not going to be consistent enough to have him as their leg spinner in the side. As you said, he's a confidence player. We saw, was it Australia series where he took a whole heap of wickets, where he kind of came back into the reckoning. But yeah, Walsh for me is a disappointment. He bowls too short, yeah. And for me, it's a shame that Moti is essentially the same type of spinner as Hossain, because Moti seemed to adjust really well. And look, in the one game we saw him, he looked very calm, composed. First ball, he almost got a wicket. So it's a shame him and Akil are same are like for like, because we do need a more clinical leg spinner in the side.
Dino, before we wrap this up, is there anyone in the Caribbean? I'm sure Imran Khan will always say, why did he never get his chance? But is there anyone in the Caribbean, even Karen Katoy could argue, how comes he never got his chance? But is there anyone you'd say, boy, what about this guy? Or do we just persist with Hayden Walsh in terms of leg spin?
I would stick with Walsh in the 50 over format, like I mentioned. I think maybe Yannick Karaya is about the same age. I would know the Trinis more, obviously, but I think Yannick Karaya is around the same age, who is a decent or batting all-rounder who bowls a decent leg spin. All right, and he did it into Super 50, and he's really one guy who's under the radar. At one point, he topped the first-class batting runs in terms of runs made. So that's one guy that's really under the radar. And just on that, we have so many good left-arm orthodox spinners. We just look at the team with Hussein and Allen and Moti. There's even Yannick Otley. There's so many other guys. There's Bishop, there's Royal, other guys on the scene, but we hardly see any leg spinners. That's what we need coming through. And been looking at the under-19s, looking for a couple of them. There's a couple of guys there in the current squad, so we got to keep our eyes on these guys and see how they develop. I know there's spinners all throughout the Caribbean. You mentioned Kotoy. Kotoy, to me, suffers similarly to what Hayden Walsh does, where sometimes, if it's not his day, it's not his day. Leg spinners notoriously go for a lot of runs if they miss their lengths. But yeah, that's it really for me. We need good leg spinners. Hayden, we got to stick with Hayden. Not necessarily in the T20 format, but we have guys who turn the ball in that direction that we can use.
Well, Mash, we might have to give a call to Devendra Bishi, get him back in there as our number one leg spinner.
Do you know what? I was actually, because as Dino was talking about the under-19s, I was just looking to see where was the under-19 World Cup R games being played, but they're not actually in Trinidad. I think the Trini games that Dino's going to get to see are Pakistan, Papua New Guinea, Afghanistan, and Zimbabwe. They're the ones all in Trini. So, but do let us know what you see out there, Dino, in general, in terms of any under-19 talents. But obviously, I think we'll be able to stream it here anyways and see what we've got coming up the sleeves. But last thing before we wrap this up, people, is this. We'll end with this little issue here. So the other thing that many people have been cussing about, so this is away now. Well, no, it is linked to the Pakistan 3-0 because our next T20 assignment is a one-off game versus Ireland, which is scheduled to be at Sabina and scheduled to be Chris Gayle's farewell game on his home ground in his home country. And then there's 5 T20s versus England very shortly after that, which Gayle will not be part of. Now, I am a Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica, and I'll get that out of the way first because people say I'm being biased, but I am answering this with a Caribbean hat on. To me, I have no issue with this. I have no issue with giving Gayle his farewell match in Jamaica. I think the Jamaican people will turn up for it. I think that given how we have let our elders leave in the past, and I'm thinking specifically Shiv in more recent times, where he got, like, at least Brian had a World Cup at home to go out on. Shiv had nothing. He just got a text message saying, well, we're not picking you no more. And that, given how much Shiv put into the game, given how much years of service he gave, that was disgraceful. Chris Gayle is probably the last great, pick my words carefully, certainly the last great multi-format player we're going to have for a long, long time. Arguably, even though people don't like to hear it about Gayle, you could argue he's in the top 5, certainly top 10. Some would say top 5 West Indians of all time. Top ODI run scorer. Second best opener ever for West Indies. I know people say Haynes and Greenwich, but check the stats. Gayle's actually in top 2. And obviously the best 2020 player in the world ever, right? If we can't give a farewell match for someone like that, we obviously will never give anybody a farewell match, because if Gayle can't get it, and I've seen people like Fazier's our guy, but Fazier has cussed it out. Who else cussed it out recently? Philo Wallace cussed it out. A whole heap of people have cussed it out. What's his face? Andy Roberts has cussed out the idea. Mason cussed out the idea. It sets a dangerous precedent, everyone keeps saying. But surely it sets a good precedent, because if you set the bar that high and say, this is the type of player we're going to give farewells for, it's not like we're going to give anybody else a farewell match in the next 50 years. You know what I mean?
You know what? I think as well, the context is important as well, because the T20 was added on. It was initially just meant to be 3 ODI. So they've obviously added this on, bearing in mind it could be a farewell for Gayle. So it wasn't as if they had T20 scheduled under the Future Tours program and people are missing out on selection so Gayle can get a farewell. This was almost set up as a testimonial. And if you think Sachin Tendulkar, West Indies played 2 tests against India, which they specifically set up as a farewell testimonial to Tendulkar because he's their greatest player in Test cricket. Arguably, Chris Gayle's the greatest player in T20 cricket of all time. So it's only right we give him a farewell in the format which he's become the greatest in, and which he's sort of secured. He's already a world-class player, but he's sort of become a legend through T20 format cricket. So for me, it's a no-brainer. You can see the argument that, it's a competitive match, you can't give it to someone for the sake of it. But I'm just saying, in the context of Cricket West Indies, setting up this match as a one-off specifically for Chris Gayle to say farewell, I don't see any issues with it.
Dino, I'm hoping you're going to give a counter-argument, but maybe you agree. We don't know.
Oh, man. I tend to lean on the side of it's a bad precedent, because it suggests that you could just select whoever you want, when you know that there's outside interference in selection, that you can do whatever you want and play games wherever you want based on your own whims. That's what it suggests, right? Look, do I really have a problem with it? No, because let's put it in context, right? You were getting 2 additional games because of Chris Gayle. That wasn't going to be there in the first place. So that's going to make money. It's a longer tour, and that means more money. And that means more cricket for everyone. So the outcome of it is positive. So if you're going to break the rules and for a positive outcome to celebrate a guy, you think if we had, if you think they would have done the extra games if it wasn't Chris Gayle? So he alone on respect has demanded these extra games. People are going to come out and probably fill the stadium for 2 days for Chris Gayle. Right, but it does set a bad precedent, because that means West Indies can start a game for someone, pick any team they want anywhere for an international West Indies match. It's not like it's a pre-series warm-up send-off. It's an international match, and there's alternatives. Why couldn't it have it been done privately, like the Chris Gayle private charity match just before the Ireland series or something like that? Or, there were alternatives. I'm just saying what it is, right? I just want that same energy that they're doing to do that. When Asian teams come here, set up the game, so we play them in St. Lucia and pay 5 fast bowlers and bounce them out. With that same energy that you're coming with when, it's Gayle's retirement, let's get a game in Sabina Park and give Gayle it, right? So when Asian teams come here, let's get a game in St. Lucia and bounce them out with 5 fast bowlers. And when England and Australia come here, let's put them in Guyana or Trinidad and spin them out. That same energy, you can't just use it just because it's making money for Gayle. Let's have all of this energy in every series and try to maximize every series, right? I just take it a bit
No,
further.
do you know what? That's actually a valid point.
Yeah, that is good.
I agree with that same energy point. The only thing I would say to counter on your points is that T20s are so meaningless outside of an actual World Cup. Okay, they have meaning, but what I mean is they're not. It's not like it's an ODI Super League. If you see what I mean, there's no points on the line. So if you're going to do it, a T20 game is the best game to throw it away in, because this T1 is one T20 game versus Ireland has has no meaning on anything. If they had done it for the 5 T20 games versus England, then I think I'd probably say that's not right. But with no disrespect to Ireland, it's basically a charity match anyway, isn't it? Like, it's basically a throwaway game to just say, well, there you go. But like I say, I totally see where the people are saying it sets a dangerous precedent. I get it. But for my thing, so here we go. Brilliant. So Mr. Lover says, so why not give one to Marlon Samuels? But what did Marlon say? Okay, yes, man of the match in 2 World Cup finals, but we're saying Shanda Paul should have got one. That's the point. We're saying he should have. We're saying Shanda Paul should have been treated better. He wasn't. That's the problem. So I'm happy with setting the precedent as long as the standard is a Shanda Paul standard or a Chris Gayle standard. I don't want to see Shimron Hetmeyer get a send-off. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you actually have to do something. So, and
someone in the comments said Devon Smith needs to go.
Does Carlos Brathwaite need a send off? Come on, you want a World Cup?
So as long as we maintain going forward the send off is because you have been a true great, and let's be honest. Before Gayle, Shiv was the last great. Before Shiv, it was Lara. It's not like we got greats upon greats upon greats, you know. We're not due to see another great in West Indies cricket for what? At minimum 25 years. Is Jason Holder a great? No. And he's the closest we could argue to that. So great means you have done something that's absolutely out of this world. And I'm sorry, but we don't have those. So I've got no problem with it being Chris's one. But yeah, that's us, I guess. That's us. So that's the Chris Gayle farewell. In terms of what's coming up, people, it's Christmas time, but in less than a month, about 3.5 weeks away, we do have more cricket. It's 3 ODIs versus Ireland. So cricket isn't stopping; it's coming quicker. In fact, it's hectic at the start of next year. 3 ODIs versus Ireland. The Gayle farewell T20, under-19 World Cup, England come for 5 T20s, then we go to India for something, I don't even know what, then England come for the test matches, West Indies women have the World Cup. That's all in the first 3 months of next year, so the cricket's not going anywhere. If anything, it's coming fast, it's coming quick and fast, with the obvious highlight being West Indies versus England, which should be a keenly fought test match amongst 2 of the worst test sides in the world. So that should be quite interesting. But any last words from you two, Dino and Santoki?
Yeah, I'll just come in because so you forgot to mention the first class season in that. Someone mentioned in the comments earlier. I just remember they mentioned in the comments. They said the first class season, will that still happen? You know, in a bubble. Look, no one watches that. No one goes to the ground. So it's going to happen. It's going to be fine. There's no concerns on that one. That should be all right. Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasure. I just wanted to say thanks to you guys, as always, for having me here. And Merry Christmas to everyone. I know it's almost Christmas already. And so much to look forward to next year. So, you know, it's been a pleasure to be here with you guys throughout this year, or maybe for half of the year. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone, to you guys at the pod, and all the great work that you do, and everyone who supports it, all the fans of this show, and so on. So next year is going to be a lot of cricket. Fingers crossed. Let's go.
The cricket's giving Mash energy.
Mash, yeah, man. Mash has been full of energy the whole time, man.
Yeah.
Any last words, Santoki?
Yeah, but no, just thanks to everyone who's continued to support us and who have been here for this chat. Merry Christmas to everyone. Stay safe. Obviously, COVID's going around, but yeah, we'll see you guys next year. Chris, when does the Island series starts? First week of January, so we'll be back very shortly to look at that, and then it's relentless after that. We've got matches upon matches upon matches, and we'll be here for the duration, hopefully joined by Dino as well to provide his great analysis. So yeah, take care everyone and stay safe.
Most definitely. So look out for episode 53 of the podcast. I think we're going to drop it tomorrow. Someone said retirement match for Roach. We can talk about that in the next live that we do, but share this with your peoples, like I say, once we've dropped it, and look out for episode 53 dropping hopefully tomorrow. But thank you everyone, and good.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.